So I have up a drawing file, which is an IDW file. And a drawing file, I'll just zoom out a little bit, has our title block, and we can draw all of our, we can show all of our views on here. I've just chosen to show an isometric because it describes the part a little bit better. But we're going to draw this same part that we just completed as additive modeling now as subtractive modeling, which means we're going to take one big hunk of material and remove parts from it to make our part. I am going to look at it this way. I have a part that overall is 2¼ inches high, 1½ inches wide, and 1½ inches deep. So I'm going to draw a rectangular prism that has a width of 1½ inch, depth of 1½ inch, height of 2¼ inches, and remove material from it, just to remain whatever's red in here. So essentially, this rectangle in here is going to be removed material. This rectangle over here will be removed material. And I'm going to do this by making what's called a cut extrude instead of an additive extrude. At this point, we've been making add extrudes or join extrudes. We're going to use a cut extrude. So I'm going to come up and I'm going to go up to File. I'm going to click on New, and I'm going to make a new standard part. I don't need a drawing yet. I don't have multiple parts I'm going to put together in an assembly. I'm going to make a part file. So double click on standard.ipt. I'm going to resize this window a little bit so I can see my isometric as I draw, just as a reference. And I am going to now draw a rectangular prism with these 3 height, width, and depth dimensions. Now, I'm going to draw from the front view. And in the front, I see height and width, which means I'm going to draw an 1½ inch wide by 2¼ inch high rectangle. I could do it from the right, where I see depth and height. I could do it from the top, where I see width and depth. That will only define what the size of a rectangle is. So let's go from the front. I'm going to click on Start 2D Sketch. My front face is parallel to the XY plane, so I'm going to draw on the XY plane. I'm going to draw a rectangle that is, I'm going to go shape before size. So I'm going to zoom out by pushing the wheel or scrolling the wheel away from me. That zooms out. I'm going to zoom out a little bit more. And wherever you have your mouse pointer, when you zoom, is where the center of the zoom is going to occur. So if I want to see more out here, I can zoom out there. If I want to see more down here, I can zoom out down here. Wherever your mouse pointer is going to be the center. So when I zoom, I like to keep it around the origin, just for convenience. To zoom in closer, I scroll the wheel mouse towards me. And you can see that the dimensions available to me as I zoom in more. And now I'm going to pan or drag my picture by just clicking and holding the wheel mouse until I get back to the center. If you ever get lost, you can double click the wheel mouse and it'll recenter the view, which means bring the drawing area back into shape. So let's zoom out a little bit by pushing the wheel away from me until I get to about 1½ inch wide. I'm going to need to zoom out a little more. About 1½ inch wide and 2¼ inches high. That's pretty close. Good enough. Shape before size. I wanted the shape of a rectangle. Now I'm going to make the size. You can see the geometric constraints. A rectangle has opposite sides parallel, has a right angle, and it has a horizontal constraint to make sure that this segment down here stays parallel to the horizontal axis. So let's throw in some dimensions now. I'm going to zoom in a little bit by rolling the mouse wheel back towards me. We put in a dimensional constraint here, 1.5 inches. Put in a dimensional constraint over here of 2¼ inches for the height. Fully constrained, no more dimensions needed, all purple, we're good. So now I've got the front view with a 2¼ inch height, 1½ inch width. I just need to extrude now the 1½ inch depth. So I will click on the extrude tool. There was only one closed profile, so it automatically selects that. And I know that a profile has been selected because the arrow is white, meaning it has information. Don't want to extrude 1 inch. I want the depth of 1½ inches. So I'm just going to change that to 1½ inch, and now I've got my rectangular prism. Next step now is I am going to, on the front face of this, remove a rectangle because the front view of this shape is just an L shape. So I'm going to remove a 1 block wide by 2 block high rectangle. I'm going to do that by doing the following. I'm going to start a sketch on the front face. Now, it's not really a sketch on the front face, it's a sketch on the plane that contains the front face. So all we really need is a flat face of an object, and then the plane that contains that face is where we're drawing. We could very well sketch offside or outside of the part. I could finish the sketch, I could come back into 3D world, I could do an extrusion, and I could pick that entire profile I just drew and draw a much bigger addition to that part. However, that's not what I want, so I'm going to undo that sketch and undo that extrusion and just go back to my original part. I'm going to come up here to the view cube, front, top, right. I will click on the home icon to get my isometric. There we go, front, top, right. Now I'm going to sketch on that face, actually the plane that contains that face. Just make sure that you understand that we're not really sketching on a face, we're sketching on a plane. And on that face, I'm going to draw the rectangle I was talking about. So I'm going to get rid of a rectangle by attaching to the upper right corner, and then coming down about 1.5 inches down for 2 blocks and about 3/4 of an inch over for 1 block. And I'm going to put in some dimensional constraints now. This here is 1.5 inches for 2 blocks high. This here is 0.75 inches for 1 block over. Purple, fully constrained, I'm good. I'm going to finish the sketch now and go back to an isometric by double clicking on one of the corners of the view cube. I got my top front right here is what I'm looking at. And I am going to cut this section. I'm just going to show it to you because that's the best way to see what goes on. Click extrude. I only have one closed profile, so it picks it. However, it is now a join extrude. Over here in the middle, we have several different options for types of extrude. Join extrude adds material. Cut extrude removes material. And I can do one of two things. I can pick a distance of 1.5 inches, which is the full depth, or I can come here and say all and just remove all material in this direction that this shape, this rectangle here, would remove. And since I know that I am going to extrude my cut extrude all the way back, I'm just going to pick all and click OK. And now I have my L shape. Only problem is I need 2 more areas to remove. One is another rectangle here, and I also have to remove this negative space here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tackle the other rectangle 2 blocks high, 1 block wide to get rid of this space. So now I'm going to start a sketch, and I'm going to draw on this face. Actually, I'm going to draw on the plane that contains that face. Keep remembering this is always a plane, not just a face. And this is the right side view. So I'm going to remove the upper left corner by drawing a rectangle. So I'm going to draw a rectangle that has a vertex in the extreme upper left corner. And down here, I'm going to let it, because it's 2 blocks deep and I'm removing a 1 dot width, I am going to attach to the midpoint, which will be halfway back through the depth. And I can verify that by seeing it says 0.75 inches. It's green, which means I am locked into a point. I'm just going to click down, and look at that. By using, let's right click and finish drawing rectangles. By using geometric constraints, this vertex and this midpoint down here, I'm fully constrained. No need for any geometric or dimensional constraints. Finish my sketch, come back into 3D world, feature world, click extrude, and again, one closed profile. That's the one that's going to extrude, but I want a cut extrude of removal. Seems kind of silly to remove 1.5 inches material where I only have 3/4 of an inch, but you can do that. However, since I want to go all the way back with my cut, I'm just going to pick all, and it'll remove all the material that it intersects. Cut extrude all the way through, click OK, we're good. At this point, I have a 1 block high base, a 2 block high back. I just need to get rid of this space in here. So one more sketch. And you'll see over here that as I create the extrusions, I can see what extrusion formed what feature by hovering over it. And it shows me that was the original rectangular prism. The second extrusion was removing the right side for the L. The third extrusion was moving the front side for the L, you might say. And I'm going to make a fourth extrusion using a sketch. on the plane that contains this face, and it's going to be a rectangle going from this vertex. Oh, missed my vertex, so I'll hit escape. I'm going to come back to rectangle. I'm going to go from this vertex to this vertex, fully constrained. Hit escape a couple times to get out because I used geometry. Finish a sketch and one more cut extrude. Extrude, pick the profile for me, do a cut extrude for all the way through the thickness, and boom, there's my part. Come up here to color. Instead of red this time, why don't we make it blue? Green. Green's a wonderful color. There's a green puzzle part. So that was a subtractive method. Over in the browser here, the fourth extrusion was that removal. You might ask yourself, what on earth happened to all the sketches? Well, whatever happened to the sketches, I think this sketch was a mistake. And the way that I know it's a mistake is that it wasn't consumed by an extrusion. Feature consumption of sketches involves, hey, you use this sketch to make me, I'm going to eat it, and I'm going to hide it underneath of me. Kind of like in Windows file systems. If I see an arrow next to the object or the feature, I click on that arrow to expand it, and sure enough, the first sketch was consumed by extrusion 1. The second sketch appears not to have been used by anything, and the reason I know it wasn't used by anything is take a look at sketch 1, how the icon is gray. This icon down here is still colorful, meaning it wasn't used for anything. It appears to just be a dot on the bottom left corner of this object. I'm going to right click and delete it. And it doesn't affect my part at all. I don't want extra sketches lying out there. I actually want to use as few sketches as possible. Extrusion 2, expand it, it consumes sketch 3. Extrusion 3 consumes sketch 4. And extrusion 4 consumes sketch 5. So I used 1, 2, 3, 4 sketches for 1, 2, 3, 4 extrusions. Not too inefficient. Now that I'm done, I can right click over here and I can collapse all, which means I'll hide all the stuff that's hiding underneath these entities, these features. If I want to see all of the hidden objects that are underneath all of the features, I can right click and expand all in my browser. And I can see every single thing that went into drawing this part. Sometimes that's helpful just to get a grasp for what everything I've done. And if I ever want to edit, I can right click and edit my sketch. And I can go back and I can change the sketch that I used. I can then right click and finish sketch. I didn't make any changes, so the part didn't make any changes. I'm going to right click and collapse them all again. But there you go. That's how you use subtractive modeling and cut extrudes to make a part.